GT endurance race at Monza and had the satisfaction of beating the hitherto all-conquering Ferrari 250 GTOs on their home ground. Prior to this era of GT racing, with cars loosely based on production road models, Aston Martin had concentrated on a pure sports racing class, with a great deal of success. Typical of the era is the DB3S, owned by Christopher Sawyer of Oklahoma City and shown at Pebble Beach in the official white and blue racing livery of the United States. The DB3S was always a front runner in the 3-litre class in the mid-50s and often a contender for outright honours, despite the presence of bigger engine cars from Jaguar, Ferrari and Maserati. Major successes were outright wins in the Goodwood Nine-Hour Race and the Tourist Trophy on the Dundrod Road Circuit in Northern Ireland, as well as leaderboard placings here at the Nürburgring and at Le Mans. The successor to the DB3S was the DBR1, this car being another from the collection of Viscount Down. In 1959, the DBR1 gave Aston Martin both the World Sports Car Championship and a Le Mans 24-hour race win, although the season didn't start too well when Carroll Shelby retired from the Sebring 12 Hours with clutch trouble. 3 months later, however, he and partner Roy Salvadori were well recompensed for this setback by scoring the victory at Le Mans, which David Brown had lusted after for so long. It was this win, plus others in the Nürburgring 1,000 kilometres and the Goodwood TT, that iced the Aston Martin cake with the world title. After 46 years, 4 different owners, and a massive personal investment by David Brown, Aston Martin could finally claim to be the best racing sports cars in the world. Held on the same weekend as the Pebble Beach Concours are the Monterey Historic Automobile Races on the nearby Laguna Seca racetrack. The honoured driver for 1997 was none other than Carroll Shelby. Carroll had to take an early retirement from racing due to heart problems, but since he has had both a heart and a kidney transplant. Now in his 70s, he looks fit and strong, and one of his main interests these days is the foundation he set up to help young children with heart problems. At Laguna, Shelby was busy raising money for this worthy cause, and it was something to which his legions of fans were more than prepared to contribute.
The years that I drove for Aston Martin were the years that I was planning to build my own car. And Aston Martin and John Wire and all the people, the engineers at Aston Martin, are the ones that helped me learn how to build a Cobra. And I always wanted to build my own car. I wanted to use an American V8 because the English cars, you could put 300, 400 horsepower. An American engine, that's where I learned to do it at Aston Martin, working around with the mechanics there during all those years. So Aston had a lot to do with the cars that I've built since, and the reason that I'm here today.
That's terrific. The other reason you're here today is your charitable foundation. Tell us about that. It's a fantastic story.
Yes, it's John Ashburn runs the English side of it. You know, he's head of Addenbrooke's hospital in Cambridge, and the reason that I formed it was I was laying in the hospital waiting for a heart transplant, and young children both died on each side of me waiting for a heart, and I decided, here's an old man 67 years old that's lucky enough to get one, and God must be saying something. So I've made my mind up that I'm going to try to help children with cardiac problems, and that's probably my #1 project in life. I love my cars, but to see that the children get some help when so many programs from the governments fall through the crack, and that's the reason for my foundation. It's not a large foundation, but all the money goes to the kids. I'm very proud of it. We've helped a lot of young people, but that's the reason for it.
Accompanying Carroll Shelby at Laguna Seca was the actual DBR1 that he and Roy Salvadori took to victory at Le Mans. Now under the care of historic racing car specialist Tim Samways, the Aston was in winning form again at Laguna, 38 years down the road. Tim prepared the car perfectly for its reunion with Shelby, and Briton Peter Hardman took it to an appropriate victory in the weekend's main sports car race. And it wasn't only Shelby's old car that was at Laguna to bring back the memories. So were three of his old mates from the Aston Martin days. Roy Salvadori, Sterling Moss and Paul Frere all joined Aston Martin's managing director Bob Dover in making a presentation to Carroll on the Laguna Seca start line.
The car that I've just been driving with Carroll was the best Aston they ever made. That was a beautifully balanced car, superb brakes, and I think everybody agreed it was their best product.
It was certainly the best of all the sports racing cars I drove in the 50s. Driving into the corners was sharp and very precise. And then it had a rack and pinion steering, which was more sensitive than the Ferrari.
In 1958, when I believe we had the 3-litre formula, so it put us in the same ball game as other cars. Previous to that, we had to compete against the 3.945 Ferrari, the 4.5-litre Maserati, 3.8 Jaguars. For the first time, we were on a 3-litre limit, so we were in with chances. The thing that spoilt the 1958 season was the fact that we were locking up in gears. We'd jam in fourth, we couldn't get out of fourth, and the gearbox wasn't the most pleasant gearbox, and that lost Aston's quite a few races. When we got into 1959, to a great extent, they'd solved their problems. It wasn't the easiest gear change, but at least, you know, it was a reliable gearbox and it would be there at the end of the race. And that's why we were successful in 59. I would have thought that without the gearbox troubles in 58, we probably would have won Le Mans then. It was good because we won, Carroll and I won. It was bad because DB then achieved his ambition, which was to win Le Mans, and stopped sports car racing. So you take it from there.
After David Brown had pulled Aston Martin out of sports car racing, Salvadori went on to partner Shelby in the Aston Martin Grand Prix car.
Well, Carroll and I drove that for the 59-60 season, and to be truthful, they missed out with that because they'd had the car under sheets in 1957. I tested the car in 57. It was a supercar then. They wouldn't race it because they were putting all their effort into the sports car racing. When they decided to race it, it was the era of the rear engine car. And although we had a damn good car, and it was very competitive against any front engine car, it wasn't as good as the rear engine car. And progressively, the difference was greater. We were falling back. So it was a shame, really. They had the car when they had possible chances of winning the World Championship, but never raced it.
Grand Prix legend Sterling Moss contributed to Aston Martin's World Sports Car Championship by winning at the Nürburgring and at Goodwood.
The Aston of that era was terrific. The DBR1, I think, was probably as good an Aston as I've ever driven. They started with the DB3S, and then of course we improved it and then changed it and then became the DBR1. And I think it was not at the Mans particularly, because I reckon the test of a real test of a sports car is Nürburgring. And to be able to go to Nürburgring and win 1,000 Ks with the DBR1, as in fact we did, shows just how great the car was. From the point of view of the driver, it was a lot more fun, because I mean Nürburgring is a place where it's only 6 or 7 hours, you're allowed to have a go, you can race. Le Mans, it's a Grand Prix of endurance, and you can't race, you've got to take it easy. Look, you've got 24 hours. It's a great event, but from a driver's point of view, it's not the same sort of enjoyment, shall I say, that I got at Nürburgring. I race because I love racing, and to drive for Astons was great because you could talk to them and you could go, you'd sort of say, let's go and do this race or that, and one would negotiate with John Wire or David Brown, depending on who it was, and go to good circuits. I think David Brown contributed a lot because of his enthusiasm of the sport. People say you never make money if you own Astons, and I think up until now, Astons haven't really had a car that was as marketable as they do now. I think that the heritage of what Aston Martin are is now beginning to show through in what is without doubt their finest road car, the DB7.